Shalom, family. Welcome back to the Kingdom of Israel and another biblical discussion where we're really focused on, heritage and not religion. We're going to read, as always, out of the Bible. And I have a better definition of the word Bible for you. I know you all have heard it being used as basic instructions before leaving the earth, right? But I have a more detailed, definition for you for that. But we're going to look at world peace prophecies 2026. And you can see the image that we have with the POTUS gripping the globe like a basketball, and there's his ever so infamous, his ever so infamous grin, I guess, right? But thank you all for coming, into the live as well. But world peace prophecy 2026. We have to talk about it because there are a lot of things that are happening in the world right now, and it's moving, within a biblical proportion to prophecy. And not much chatter is really happening across the social media platforms to that degree, like really highlighting, how the parallels between biblical prophecy and actual world events, are taking place, how these things, coincide, right? So thank you, again for coming, into the live. You can share the live, and just get yourself ready, get your pen, get your pad out, get ready to take notes. I have about 4 pages that I will be, going through here, dealing with these precepts. But, more specifically, also going to look at the quote from the POTUS, himself, when he brought out the fact that when it comes to an idea, of like world peace or his involvement in the world, he boldly and or proudly states nothing can stop him but his own mind, right? His morality. That's the thing, that we should all be thankful for, right? Thank you all for coming in, to the live. So here we're going to jump right off into it because, this time does fly, and I have a number, of precepts that I want to get through. So we're going to jump right off into it, and I'll start out with Isaiah 29 and 6. I'll start out with Isaiah 29 and 6. And you all, thank you for coming, into the live. You all, we are looking at world peace prophecy, 2026. I'm going to remove this image here shortly, but I want to start off with Isaiah 29 and 6, and it says, "Thou shalt be visited of the Lord of hosts with thunder, and with earthquake, and with great noise, and with storm and tempest, and the flame of devouring fire." So we've all witnessed, the what they call climate change, and right now you have a entire region, of the country that is, under severe storm, warning. And so we're witnessing certain things as it pertains, to prophecy and what's happening out here in the world. Then it says, "And the multitude of the nations shall fight against Ariel, even all that fight against her and her munition and that distress her shall be as a dream of a night vision. We have to pay attention to what's being said right here, because it's speaking as if, these things are going to go by quickly as if it never happened. Number 8, it says, and it shall even be as when an hungry man dream, and behold, he eat, and he awake, and his soul is empty. Now, I don't know about you, but I've had those dreams where I'm eating, and man, in the dream is good, but when I wake up, I'm still, hungry. Okay. Let's see. I just got a little warning right here. It says, keep your live engaging, turning your camera off, showing static images, or being away for long periods may result in your live becoming ineligible for friends. Okay, that's a little warning right there. So I'm going to move the image right here, right now, okay? We're going to take the image down. Give me a second. We're going to work through this. They don't like my image. They got the new algorithms and everything going. So we're going to see. We're going to get this image off, and then we're going to get back to what we were looking at here. All right. Want to remove the image, right? Okay. Y'all forgive me while I'll figure this part out right here. TikTok, they sent their little warning through, so I've done this quite a few times before, and now, maybe that, yeah, here we go. Okay. Oh, that's not the one I want. One second. Where is it? Y'all bear with me, right? Here we go. I think this is what I'm looking for right here. That's what I was looking for. All right, cool. What's up, family? Thank you all for coming in. Thank you for joining, the live. I had to take my little cool image down. I thought my image was all right. TikTok ain't like my little image, right? But as I was saying, as far as Isaiah 29, and 6, as we're talking about world peace and prophecy, it was talking about, a man that dream and he eating the dream, but when he wake up, he's still hungry. And I'm saying, I don't know, but I've had those dreams. I don't know about you all, but I had a dream like that where I'm eating, and it is just really good. But then, I wake up and, I'm like, man, if I could only bring that back, right? So it says, or as when a thirsty man dream, and behold, he drink, but awake, and behold, he is faint. And his soul with appetite. Okay. So shall the multitude of all the nations be that fight against Mount Zion. Okay. So we're talking about this prophecy. 2026, we're looking at, world peace. And, the POTUS at this point, he's promising, to bring world peace. And he's made the expression, for the most part, that only he can do this. We need to be thankful for him and his mind and his morality. And he just created a, board of peace, And I don't know what you all expect for this to do or what you think, is going to become of it. But I'm just telling you, like all the other things, this is vanity and vexation. It's nothing, right? Ecclesiastes 7:8, it says, better is the end of, a thing than the beginning thereof. We're going to talk about that. He says, and the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. So when you look at better is the end of a thing than, the beginning thereof, this is really looking at those, how people start out real strong, in some things, and then as it go along, they just kind of fizzle out, fade out, and they're not there, anymore. Then it tells you, it says patient in spirit is better than, the proud in spirit. So, those that can hang in there and you can be patient, in your spirit, it will be far more rewarding than those that like run out of patience and turn back to their pride. All right. So here we go with 2 Thessalonians 2 and number 3. And they say, let no man deceive you by any means. Woo. That right there is real deep when we talk about prophecy, 2026, when we look at world peace. It said, let no man deceive you by any means. So, y'all forgive me. So when he puts this board together, and this is the board of, peace, or as they're like trying to convince people that they're about to bring about this world peace, here, let no man deceive you by any means. For the day shall not come except there, come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed. So what do you think about, this man, this president, this world leader, right? Is he a man of sin or is he a righteous man? Because you can't find yourself being in a position, to be both, as again, we're dealing with prophecy, because most folks think, we're just in this world and things are just happening haphazardly and, we're just going along, right? So here, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, right? That's who we're talking about when we look at, someone that's always promising, peace, tranquility, but yet they're full of destruction. Let's look at John 17 and 12. He says, while I was with them in the world, I kept them in thy name. Now I told you, in thy name is not, the reference of, Jesus, Yahweh, El Shaddai. That's not what it's speaking of. I kept them in thy name, as he said, his name is the word of God. So to keep them in thy name is speaking about the functionality of the word. A lot of people will say that they've read the Bible, right? And I have a real good definition for you, pertaining to the Bible. But a lot of people will say they read the Bible, but should that be what we're doing? Is like reading the Bible, or should we be trying to live what's in the Bible? So when he says, I kept them in thy name, it's more toward the action of how they live, not, the point of, worshiping, some deity per se, but understanding in the manner and the way that we should conduct, ourselves, right? He said, those that thou gave me, I have kept. He says, and none are lost but the son of perdition, that the scripture might be fulfilled. And all we're doing, at this point in time is we're drawing these close parallels as we look to understand prophecy as it's written. And we look at these world events that are transpiring like right before our eyes and coming to understand these close parallels, because I don't know what you see, but I do surely see, prophecy being fulfilled in my lifetime. And I think more people should like really come to understand, this is what's happening. Micah 2:2, it says, and they covet fields, meaning they desire these fields, and they take them by violence. How much of that can we relate, with, right? We just had an incident where, a world leader was taken, out of his home and brought into another land to be tried, right? And the point of an entire hemisphere, is being claimed, right? You got the whole thing going on with Greenland and, those things, right? So they desire, these lands, these fields, and they take them by violence. It says, and houses, and they take them away. So they oppress a man and his house, even a man and his heritage. All we're talking about or trying to point out are things that are written that also relate to prophecy. Looking at how they oppress a man, looking at how they've taken land, they've taken homes, they've even hijacked entire heritages, right? 2 Thessalonians 2 and number 4. He says, who oppose and exalt himself above all that is called God or that is worshiped. So in this instance, we're looking at a people or a man that exalts himself above the creator, himself. And when we look at, world leaders, and more specifically, the world leader in America, this is someone that, feels he should be exalted, above all men, and more looked at as if, he's a God himself, right? Romans 11:29, it tells us, for the gift and calling are without repentance. Now, what we're talking about here as we're dealing with prophecy, it's the fact that, man, the world is in a terrible state right now, okay? And when you look out and you try to find, that righteous individual, it's like they're extremely, hard to find. And the entire world is just corrupt, right now. I don't care where you go, it's corrupt. It's evil, it's wicked. But those things, are changing because of the collapse. The systems are, failing one after the other. So when you talk about the gifts and the calling and, God being without repentance, this is looking at the fact that for all of these things that's happening and the way he's going to turn it around, right? He doesn't repent for those things. Like, this is his ultimate design and how he's going to clean a people up and position them so that they can rule the world in righteousness. And these are the things that they're not talking about within your religious institutions, right? They've taken the word of God down, a crooked path of prosperity, preaching, and, God has a blessing with, your name on it, name it, claim it. I mean, they have a whole bunch of, superstitions that they're putting out there, and people aren't truly holding the value of the book to live what's in the book, right? They rather just talk about it and say, I've read it. But when it comes to, establishing those principles in their life to be that example, that's where they have an issue with what's written. Okay. 2 Thessalonians number 5, it says, he was just closing out. He says, remember ye not that when I was with you, I told you, these things. And this is why we're focused right now on prophecy, because we kind of want to go through and look at how much of it is relevant to today and what's happening right now. 2 Ezra 6:1. He says, and he said unto me in the beginning. Oh, y'all pay attention to this. I got about 6 verses, that I'm going to read. And when I get down to number 6, that's when the cap, is put on and it's sealed. You'll understand, fully what's being expressed right here. Right? As we're talking about prophecy. So I want you to see this, right? He says, and he said unto me in the beginning, when the earth was made, before the borders of the world stood, or ever the wind blew. Okay. Before it thundered and lightning, or even the foundations of paradise were laid, before the fair flowers were seen, or even movable powers were established, before the innumerable multitude of angels were gathered together. Y'all hang in there and watch where this is going. Or ever the heights of the air were lifted up, before the measure of the firmaments were named. So this goes to say, with the firmament, there are levels to it. Okay. He says, or ever the chimneys in Zion were hot. 2 more, you all, then we'll get to the point. He says, and before the present years were sought out, and or ever the inventions of them that now sin, right, were turned. Pay attention. He says, before they were sealed that have gathered faith for treasure. So there was a time that you had those that took pride, in faith, right? In the belief in the Creator and living that life. And that was their treasure, even more than gold. Number 6, this is the one I'm talking about right here. He says, then did I consider these things, right? He said, then did I consider these things, going all the way back before the earth was even created, the angels and, the measures of the firmament. He said, before that, he considered these things. This is the Creator trying to say, I planned this out. This is my will. Listen to it. Then did I consider these things, and they were all made through me alone, and through none other. By me also they shall be ended, and by none other. This is what's so powerful about what's written and understanding prophecy and how the Creator is going to present himself in a time when man think, he's so strong, because the voice of God or the presence of God has been so absent, right? So here, through prophecy, we have a trail of things that have transpired, like the wars against war. I mean, the rumors of wars, right? The nation, against nation. These things, are things that, were expressed that should happen. Okay. And we're seeing, these things take place. Now let's look at Romans 9 and number 11. He says, for the children being not yet born. In this instance, it's talking about Jacob and Esau. But in a manner of how you can look at it is, before any child is born, the Creator is saying, I've already decided and or planned how this child is going to go about and or live life, or, what role this child is going to play. So listen to it. He says, for the children being not yet born, neither having done any good or evil. This is the part I'm saying. This is decided long before you come into the world. right? The purpose of God according to election might stand, not of works, but of him that called. So when he says not of works, it's more like, let's talk about, I'll use the POTUS, right? The one that's sitting in the most powerful seat of government in the world today, right? The things that he's doing, these are things that he was born to do. To be as evil and as corrupt as he is, he was created in that manner, and there's nothing, that he can do, even if he decided to turn his life around and give it up, and there's nothing, that he can do, because it's not of works. He just said, before the children were born, neither having done any good or evil, the purpose, according to God's election, was already chosen, accepted, done, that the election might stand. I know these things are hard to comprehend just for, an average people, right? Looking at it and trying to understand it, because we think, just based on how we've been trained and told to look, at things, we somehow feel that, we understand the progression, of the world, right? But behind the scene, behind the veil of the Lord, there's a lot that we don't understand. Isaiah 14:5, he says, the Lord have broken the staff of the wicked. This is where we're still dealing with this prophecy, 2026. Because here you have a people, right, that think they're going to rule the world. They're going to have some new world order. They're going, to have some gain in the world. It's no different than Pharaoh in the day and time of his power. No one can take him down, but, the Lord had to step in and show the power of his hand. So we're in a position to see these things transpire again, because, the seat of government in America, this superpower, is under the impression that they're all the way up. Nothing can stop me. I'm all the way up. As the president did mention, his morality in his mind, that's the only thing. And that's the arrogance of man. That's the only thing that can hold him back or keep him from achieving. So here, the Lord have broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers. This is what's before them, and they don't know it, right? Due to their ignorance. Psalms 2:8, he says, ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen. So this ask of me and I shall give thee the heathen, this is looking at right now how the children of God are being afflicted and oppressed throughout the world. Okay? And these are the ones that he does not repent for, although, they're within these sinful lives, that they would be purged, tried, cleaned up, and positioned so that they could rule the world in righteousness. Because right now we see how the world is being, ruled in corruption, but yet they're trying to act as if they can offer degrees of peace. It's just, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't line up. And there's not one word that comes from out of their mouths that's not a lie. And it's like their mouths must be stopped. Every time they open that hole, deception pours out. He says, ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. So you have some people that are jockeying for this portion of land, that portion of land, this continent, that continent. But with the Creator, he's saying with his people, they're going to have the entire world. The difference is it would be ruled in righteousness. And this is something we're just not familiar with. So to a number of people, this conversation sounds frivolous, right? It sounds like, I'm just, for the most part, just trying to make up something. But what I am doing is based on prophecy, pointing out to you all how we're moving through a change, looking at cascading events take place. And it's written for us to acknowledge what's written and then compare to see if you can see it. And in this manner, you can then understand what is coming next. Number 9, he says, thou shalt break them with a rod of iron. And this is here we have a superpower. I don't feel like anything can stop them. No different than Pharaoh felt like nothing, could stop him. They're going to be broken with a rod of iron. He says, thou shalt dash them into pieces like the potter's vessel. Now here is the true intervention between righteousness, coming to, remove evil. It will not be accepted, right? We also see that in Revelations 2:27. In number 10, he says, be wise now, therefore, O ye kings, be instructed. He said, ye judges of the earth. Now, this ties into the verse where the children of God are, a nation of, kings and priests. So for the world to be ruled in righteousness, he's saying, be instructed. Ye judges of the earth, talking about these kings and these priests. And when you're instructed, you will not be instructed based on your own inclination. You'll be instructed based on the law that the Creator have put in place, that the earth should function within that law. Because the law that we're living under now, in this world and the global law, you all know it does not work. It does not benefit no one but the colonizers. They're in control of everything. But he says they, would be broken. And when they come down, who's going to come up? The next corrupt man, the next corrupt nation. This is what we're witnessing, is a turn of events within the world itself. The world is going to be here forever. But the mind state of the wicked in the world and those that can't let go, these are the ones that will be removed from off the earth. Isaiah 14:6, he says, he who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke. This is like the colonizers, how they just oppress people wherever they go and take their resources. Then they lie, they cheat, they steal, they do whatever, right? Continually, right? They smote the people in their wrath, right? He says, he that ruled the nations in anger is persecuted and none hinder, meaning nobody's going to be able to stop it. These are the bold words of Isaiah the prophet. Now, either these words are just in vain and Isaiah is not a prophet and, there is no God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or you should take heed to what's being expressed as we're looking at prophecy 2026. And if we're talking about world peace, who's going to usher in world peace, right? The colonizers and the wicked that have destroyed the earth? Or will the earth have to go through its turmoil in order to then be repositioned in righteousness through the kings and priests of the Most High God. Who is going to bring in world peace? Which aspect or line of thought have you bought into? Right? Number 7, he says the whole earth is at rest and is quiet. He says they break forth into singing, and this is when the wicked fall. Because he said they will be persecuted and none would hinder. He said at that point, the whole earth is at rest, meaning finally, we get some peace. We get to deal, with some equity. He says that at that point, and not until that point, the entire world breaks forth in singing, meaning we finally have, some joy. We're no longer under the oppression, of the colonizers, right? He says, yea, the fir trees rejoice at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon. Now, you all, this is not talking about no trees. These are representations of nations and or men. And you can tell by what comes after, right? It says, and the cedars of Lebanon saying, because we know the Lebanons don't talk. And this is how you understand it's the representation of men. Saying, since thou art laid down, no fella is come up against us. Once the colonizers, are taken out of position and or power, there will be no more evil in the world. Number 9, he says, hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thy coming. I want you to understand what hell is, because a number of people, when that term comes out, all they can think of is fire and that whole image. But this hell right here is talking about bondage. It's talking about captivity. Okay. He says, hell from beneath is moved to meet thee at thy coming. That's a very poetic, way of expressing that those that have taken the world captive in their wickedness, they're going to be taken captive in righteousness. And for them, that's going to be hell. Because they will no longer be in the position and or place, of power. They will no longer have the luxuries that they're so used to. Okay. They will finally feel what the majority of a common man or people have felt. To them, for them, that's hell. Right? No different than for us in the affliction and the oppression. This is hell for us. But these things or these roles are going to switch. Let's look at Ephesians 4:8. He says, wherefore he say, when he ascend up on high, he led captivity captive and gave gifts unto men. This is what I'm saying. It's going to switch. The captivity is going to take them captive that once held the world in captivity. And those that were oppressed and in bondage, they will receive, that gift in righteousness to rule the world in abundance, right? With equity, in a manner and a way that we've not witnessed. But these are the things that we have to look forward to. And this is what I say for those that understand, these writings, and more importantly, to know what it means to live in accordance to what's written. This is what we're expecting to take place, like the wicked are not going to rule forever. It's like that dream that he talked about. You heard me mention early on, where a man dreamed that he eaten and it's so good in his sleep, but when he wake up, he hungry. It's going to be as if these things had not transpired. So again, Isaiah 14:9, it says, hell from beneath is moved to meet thee at thy coming. Meaning, as they're falling down, as they're collapsing, the captivity is meeting them, right? Even as they're moving, in the mindset that they're moving in and the decisions that they're making, they have no idea that they're deciding their way further and further into their own captivity. They're setting, this trap for themselves and don't even know it. He says, it stirreth up, the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. It have raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. Man, it's saying all of the people that have followed them in this corruption, they're going to see the fall. They're going to give up their seats. None in wickedness will be able to have a place in rule. They all come down. Psalms 94:7. He says, yet they say, the Lord shall not see. And this is how they feel. We haven't heard or seen from God in over 4,000 years, 2,000 years, 1,000 years. Who's this God? Said, nobody is stopping me. We have manifest destiny. So they feel as if God is with them. They say, the Lord shall not see, in all of the corruption and things that they do. Neither shall the God of Jacob regard it. Right? So this God, that you're sitting up here now, on social media talking about, the God of Abraham and Jacob, he ain't thinking about what you talking about. He blessing me. Look at what I'm doing. I'm getting ready to have, the entire hemisphere and then the entire world. We're the superpower. But all the prophecy speaks toward their downfall. But they say, not that. That's not, for us. None of that pertains, to us. Isaiah 14:10. Thank you all for, coming into, the live. Right, but Isaiah 14:10. He says, all they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou so become weak as we? So this is the collapse now of, this empire, this superpower. So now the rest of, the world that was, in its grips, they're looking at it now like, are you now like us? Right? He says, art thou become like unto us? And this is the thing that's unfathomable to a number of people, that they think, this thing of the United States is going to last forever. That the empire is going to expand and, they're behind the scenes trying to see how they can create dynasties. Not realizing they're working toward their end. Psalms 94:8. He says, understand, ye brutish among the people, and ye fools, when will you be wise? He that plant the ear, shall he not hear? This is the Creator's way of saying, to these foolish people, in all of your wickedness and all of your corruption and all of your trying to make people believe that, you're for the good of everybody when you're really out and only for yourself are you, looking to do these things. He's saying, you don't think I see you? You don't think I'm going to reward you for your wickedness? You really think I'm going to let you get away with this? He says, he that planted the ear, shall he not hear? I mean, he's talking about the Creator because he's not visibly like right there in front of you to micromanage you like you really think you're getting away, you're doing something. He says, he that formed the eye shall not see. He that correct the heathen, shall not he correct? Meaning, you don't think you're going to get this judgment? You think this is what it's supposed to be? Corruption, lying, stealing, cheating, all of the things that you're doing, you feel as if this is the reward from the Most High to you to do these things to all the inhabitants of the world? He says, you're going to be corrected. He says, he that teach man knowledge, shall he not know? Like, you think you can hide? See, you can hide it from the average individual. And you can deceive them, but not with the Creator himself. You're just moving more toward, your own end, the impact of the collapse. He said, the Lord know the thoughts of man, that they are vanity. Think about it. The board of peace, those thoughts are vanity. It's not going to happen. Colossians 2:80 says, beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit. And this is what we're talking about when we look at, how, the world is moving at this point. It's all through their philosophy and the vain deceit, because nothing that they're saying is coming to pass. All the promises they make, they break, right? All of the contracts they, put their signature to, they dishonor. This is the man of sin that was waiting to be revealed. We're talking about prophecy and how it's written. We're looking at it in 2026. Paying attention to the signs that we can truly see how things are coming along, that we'll understand what the next move is. And when we see it and we can correlate, it to what's written, it helps us to make certain adjustments within our mind. Because a shift in consciousness is definitely happening right now. It's just a lot of people aren't going to manage the shift. They're going to be taken, away in the stream and or, that rush of negativity that's, going to be removed from the planet. It has to. In order for the planet to survive, right? The negative and or corruption or the unrighteous, they have to be removed. And if you're not willing to correct yourself, use this time within grace to correct yourself, to challenge your mind, to position, your being to be in the light of an upright individual, then you're going to receive the reward of the wicked. It's just that simple, right? He says, beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the traditions of men. He says, after the rudiments of the world. And this is what most people are locked into. The traditions of men, the rudiments of the world, such as the board of peace. Like, you really think, these principles that they call themselves putting together is, going to bring about peace in the world? It's not going to. If it was possible, it would have been done by now. Right? And this is why the world has to go through this traumatic shift. He says, after the rudiments of the world and not after Christ. Now, I have to deal, with, the terminology as we're reading and coming to understand, because when we see words like Christ, for a number of you, it's just the image of white Jesus that pops in. But this is talking about a way of life. This is looking at what it means to be anointed. This is a classification of people or a mindset. This is where the shift within the world is headed to. This would be that standard for righteousness that we would be subject to in ruling the world. He says in number 9, for in him dwell the fullness of the Godhead bodily. And that's, hopefully you can understand what that means based on how I just illustrated this, not being focused on one individual, but being focused on the way you conduct yourself. Right? He says, for in him dwell the fullness of the Godhead bodily. Now, in him, the him, again, is not speaking about an individually, it's not speaking about an individual, but looking at the concept. You all have to remember, how this is written in allegory. There's a hidden meaning, within these words. And I'm just trying to give you the sense that you can apply it, to your life and not just look at this as words on paper. It's far more than words on paper. It's a coded message. Why do you think, God calls it a mystery? That being a secret. It's not meant for people to look at it face on and then bam, get the understanding. Furthermore, it's not for everybody. And that's hard for a number of people to take. He says, and ye are complete in him. When we deal with the ways of righteousness, we're complete in that way. He says, which is the head of all principality and power. Coming to understand this is the way the world is going to be ruled in the future. Right? This is what the world is coming to as we're watching it, in turmoil, as we're watching it, come to, its end, only to be revived. Okay. Looking at what immortality and everlasting life looks like on earth. Psalms 94:12. Blessed is the man whom correct, who chastise. Blessed is the man whom thou chastise, whom thou correct. Now, this is not talking about just in any old manner and or way. He says, blessed is the man whom thou correct. Because so many of us are off point. So many of us live these unjust lives, but we're chosen of God. These are the ones that are blessed for God to correct them, for him to purge them like silver and try them like gold, for him to position them to then rule in his stead in righteousness. He says, O Lord, and teach him out of thy law. Right? So the man that was corrupt, the man that was wicked, the man that is chosen by God, the man that, subjects himself to righteousness. He says, blessed is the man whom thou correct. And the way he's going to be corrected is by understanding the standard for which God is going to have the entire world to live by. He says, O Lord, and teach him out of thy law. Not out of their constitution, not based on their law of the land. It's going to be totally different. And for a number of people, we can't fathom it. Or shall I say they can't fathom it. For a number of people, they have no idea what are you talking about. Because you have an entire campaign within a religious order that says the law is no more. And I don't know where, within any understanding, does it make sense that we'll be in existence without law? A way that we govern ourselves. The problem is we're just so used to a wicked rule that when you talk about moving that out of place to then be subjected by a righteous rule, they're like, no. They're like, hell to the no. There is no more law. We can just do what we want to do. It's innate, within us. We can figure it out. Right? That was where, as he said, teach them out of thy law. This is where we remember Christ said, the truth will make you free. Or he said, you should know the truth and the truth shall make you free. So let's understand what this truth is. John 17:17. He says, sanctify them through thy truth. Right? Because we're looking at the truth that's going to make you free. We're trying to understand what that truth is. He says, sanctify them through thy truth. Right? We just read in Psalms 94:12, where he said, blessed is the man that you correct. Right? And the way that you correct them is that you're going to teach them out of your law. So here he says, sanctify them, looking at John 17:17. He says, sanctify them through thy truth. He says, thy word is truth. And the word being truth, this is that law. Remember Psalms 119 and 42, where it says, thy law is the truth. These are the things that we're coming into position to understand and or know because it's been absent within our world, within our understanding. And for that reason, we see the chaos in the world because we're not familiar with what righteousness looks like. Psalms 59, Psalms 50 and 19. He says, thou give thy mouth to evil and thy tongue frame deceit. This is, again, looking at like the POTUS and the Board of Peace. They're not teaching from the standards of the Creator and his law. They're going about based on their own traditions, their own philosophies, their own vain deceit. And because they don't deal with the truth of God as it's prescribed and as it's written, he says, thou give thy mouth to evil. So when he's on CNN, CBS, NBC, everything he say, it's a lie. He's giving his mouth to evil. His tongue frame deceit. You all know it to be true. All we're looking at is what's written. We're understanding prophecy. We're looking at how he says his judgments are like a ring, or as we're more familiar with the word sound of, if you don't know, history, you're bound to repeat it, type thing. We're watching, this play out in real time, in our lifetime. I think it's beautiful that we can make these, assessments. Psalms 94:20. He says, shall the throne of iniquity have fellowship with thee, which frame mischief by a law? You all know what we're talking about right here. The entire judicial system is corrupt. They frame mischief with the law. And they expect for you to think that God is with them and that, he's going to, bless, them and America, and it's not going to happen. Shall the throne of iniquity have fellowship with righteousness? When they go around and they frame mischief with their law, when you see federal agents in the streets and they're trampling upon the rights of the people, and then the authority within government uphold, these egregious acts against innocent people, you think this throne of iniquity is going to have fellowship with God in righteousness, and these evangelics and Christian nationalists, like, you think this is a representation of God? Number 21, he says, they gather themselves together against the soul of the righteous and condemn innocent blood. Y'all tell me this is not true. Psalms 83 and 3. They take crafty counsel against thy people. All I'm doing is pulling out these words, these decrees, these declarations that have been written for us to look at, to understand what time we're in and how they're still in effect to this very day. We're moving towards something. And these writings have a way of exposing what's hidden, what's actually happening. Although we can't hear what they're saying in their private meetings, these words give us insight into what's going on. So when they stand in front of the camera and they spew their lies, you will not be deceived. As he said, beware lest they spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit. He says, they have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. The hidden ones at this point would be those that are actually chosen to rule in righteousness, but right now they're being taken in innocent blood. They're being oppressed. They're being, afflicted. So you have these people in high places, right? And in high seats because, they're so full, of their craft and of their wickedness. They're like, we're not stepping down that the world can be taken in righteousness. Oh, no, we would never do that. So they then start planning against innocent people, how to manipulate them even more so that they can fill their bellies. Number 4, he said, they said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation, right? As God said, we would be that nation of kings and priests to rule the world in righteousness. They're like, no, let's cut them off from being able to achieve that point right there. He says that the name of Israel shall be no more in remembrance. Now, the name of Israel, this has nothing to do with what's transpiring over in the Middle East. Nothing to do, with that. Okay, don't be confused, with that right there. Okay. The name of Israel, we must understand this is a people, before it was ever, proclaimed to be some state of, something. I don't know what they're talking about. But Um, they're trying to make it as if the actual people in this name should be no more in remembrance. In fact, we read earlier where, they suppress a man's house and even his heritage. And this is an instance where they've suppressed the heritage of God's people. He says, for they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. These are true words that have been written. The point is, do you see it? Are you able to make the correlation with what's happening, right now? Genesis 27 and 41. Just pay attention to this, right here, because it's hard from a biblical standpoint, from a prophetic standpoint. And because these names like Esau and Jacob and Amalek and Moab and, Ammon, we don't use those names anymore. They're now more modern names. So it makes it a little bit difficult to really identify who's who and or what's what, right? But let's look at the imagery within the words, and then, like the police, be able to come up and say, you fit the description. Let's try it like that, okay? So that we can understand who's who or what's what, in the world. Don't get caught up on the names that I'm going to point out, but let's look at the context of what's happening and what this personal people, it's really a people, what this people is going to do, okay? Genesis 27 and 41. And Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing wherewith his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, the days of mourning for my father are at hand. Then will I slay my brother Jacob. Now, this is going to go into the point of one brother, wishing to harm another brother, and how this then turns into a perpetual, thing from one generation, to another, how prophetic, this is. It's written in Ezekiel 35 and 5, where, they talk about the perpetual hatred, right? It's written that one people would have a perpetual hatred against another. All right, let's go to 1 Maccabee 8 and 1. And we're still, coming, to the point of understanding, even with a group of people called Esau, they were provided a blessing that, they would move from under the control of their brother. They would break that yoke, and then they would rule by the sword, right? And by ruling by the sword, they would then conquer the earth and live off of the fatness of the earth. And we can identify people that have actually done that to rise to the degree of power that they are to this day, and how they live. They fit that description. But y'all walk with me as we go through and we come, to that point. But we're going to get to 1 Maccabees 8 and 1, because in looking at this perpetual hatred and looking at how, they've consulted, against the hidden ones, and, how they've taken crafty counsel, and their whole goal or their whole aim is to maintain this power. And all of those that are locked in hand with them are going to receive the reward of the wicked. Let's come to understand how the judgments are like a ring, how if you don't know your history, you're going to repeat it type thing. Here we have 1 Maccabees 8 and 1. It says, now Judas had heard of the Romans Okay, so here's someone, of the kingdom of Israel. He heard of the Romans, that they were mighty and valiant men, and such as would lovingly accept all that joined themselves unto them. So no different than, the way the superpower has come into position and no place. And who's at the forefront, of it? Who's this man? Who's this people that have been at the forefront of ruling the world, that have risen to power? Right? And see, all that want to come and join them, right? They accept them, right? And he says, and make a league of amity with all that came unto them. You all understand. That's the whole point behind the superpower, the UN. It's like everything and everybody is supposed to, jockey and or, look to appease, the superpower and those that control it. Now we say superpower and that really just like covers, the face of who's responsible and who's been behind it for ages and generations. Okay? But as long as you join, with them, then you're a friend. Okay? Micah 2:1, he says, woe to them that devise iniquity. And you understand that's all they do is create corruption. Woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds. Pay attention to this part right here. When the morning is light, they practice it because the power is in their hands. So this goes back to them taking crafty counsel. But here he says, woe to them that devise iniquity. Like they're in their back rooms, they're at home. And they have this bright, wicked idea. And they can't wait to see how it, is played out in real time, on the world. He says, woe to them that devise iniquity. All of their corrupt policies and, practices and, the deals that they're making. Woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their bed. When the morning is light, they practice it because it is in the power of their hand. Like they have an option to do righteously or to do otherwise, but they're stuck on doing evil. Y'all tell me you don't understand or see what's going on as we talk about prophecy 2026 and world peace. Who's going to provide world peace? Do you believe the lies that they continue to tell that this is where world peace is going to come? Or do you expect to see world peace in another manner and or way? Or are you just totally oblivious to it and you don't know what to think? You have no hope with respect to what's going to happen. That's the point of these words and these writings, not just to be read, but so that you can live in the presence of these words and you can use these words to better protect yourself, to better be aware, to be vigilant, to know what not to be a part of. Because as I said, mentally, there's a shift in the mindset that's coming. And if you're not in line with that shift, then you would be in line with the wicked. You will receive the reward of the wicked, those that devise iniquity upon their beds and can't wait to get up and practice it. Psalms number 1 and number 2, he says, but his delight is in the law of the Lord. We have to understand because we get lost in words like Lord, right? And we have no idea, what the law is. We say, colorful things like it's the universe, and we say nature, and, We say it's innate. I mean, we say all types of things, right? But these things have been cataloged. And if you're not seeking them out, like you seek for other things that you so desire, and that's the point, and or, the intention is who want it, to where you're going to search for it, like you may search for treasure, like you may search for a job, like you search for a house, a mate. Would you search for righteousness if you understood that you can find it in something called the law, which is a standard and or a way to conduct yourself? That's all we're talking about. Something that you're going to hold yourself accountable to. But people don't want to be held accountable. But we want to hold everybody else accountable. That's called a hypocrite. Right? He says, but his delight is in the law of the Lord. And in his law do he meditate day and night. This is what we're saying. To correct yourself, you have to look at what principles are available that you can understand and study these things, you all, because there's no school for us to go to in order to get this education. You have to become an autodidact. You have to show yourself approved. You have to want to do this. You have to say to yourself, I don't want to be corrupt. I don't want to be misled. I don't want to be that person that I was anymore. Because there's true divinity, or there's true, light and or guidance within the Creator, that you can be upright, that you can be righteous. We have to meditate on this day and night. We have to come to understand what these measures, what these principles are. We have to take, you have to take, I have to deal with being responsible. As it say, we have to save ourselves. And the way you save yourself is through introspection. Nobody knows you better and or more than you. I don't know the things you hide. You don't know the things, I hide. We don't know what another person is thinking. But you, being the individual, know how to clean and or get those things out of you. And within the law of the Lord, these things, are available to clean the house. You'll go out and you'll get a Lysol, or, you'll get a Febreze, and you'll clean your home, your apartment, your trailer, your car. But when it comes to cleaning yourself, you don't know what that looks like. You don't know what kind of cleaner you should get. Well, this is where it's understood the law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. You got to go out and get you a bottle of the Lord and his law and spray it on your inside, that, like scrub bubbles, that you can spray it and that it can clean you out from the inside. Now, I told you about the Bible and how I have a new term, right? Or a new definition, because they've given it to us to say it's the basic instructions, before leaving earth, right? We've all heard that. Okay. Well, I had to go a little bit, deeper, than that to, try and understand, because folks are like, oh, it's just a book and you need to understand and know, what it is, the word and all this other stuff on the book. And most of you don't know. So I had to go and really dig into it. And it says Bible, right? So I had to break it down. We know bi is two and bull is saying capable. So this is a book that's 2 times capable. But we have to know capable of what? It's capable of giving us the standards that we can live in the natural life. And it's also providing us with the instructions that we can live with immortality. This is the Bible. This is what it's capable of. The mortal life and the immortal life. Looking at what the transition is going to be. But the way I put it, Bible, a term indicating that something has 2 sides, which are worthy, capable of, fit, or tending to, indicating that something can be acted upon in a certain way. Indicating that something can be acted upon in a certain way. That's the definition for Bible now. For all that have been trying to explain it and understand it, the book is telling us how to live in the terrestrial flesh, and it's explaining how we're going to live in the celestial flesh. Let's look at Joshua, number 1 and number 8, and we're coming to the end, you all. We're coming to the end. Joshua, number 1 and number 8. Now, I want to thank you all that, have come, into the live, and, for those of you that have shared, and for the likes and things of that nature. I appreciate it, right? So Joshua, number 1 and number 8, it says, the book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth. Because this is, again, that thing that we're saying is preparing us to live in a correct manner as we live today in this vessel. This is the standard for which we can have righteousness. The book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate therein day and night, meaning this is the thing that we should be studying to understand how to conduct ourselves, how to interact, with one another. This is really what is considered or called love, not the way that you make me feel. Love is a standard. It's a principle. It's an act upon which how we interact and or engage with one another. He says, thou may observe to do according to all that is written therein. See, if we deal with the law as it is written and we subject, ourselves to the higher principles, we would be better individuals in our thought, in our action, and, all of the way that we go about our lives. He says, for thou shalt make thy way prosperous. So if we're dedicated, if we're committed, to this way of life, it says we're going to make our way prosperous. Now, we do realize that in corruption, there are those that appear to be ultra prosperous and they got it going on. So now we have to understand by what standard do we want to achieve prosperity? Do we want to achieve prosperity, in righteousness, or prosperity through an unrighteous measure? That's a choice or a decision people have to make, because riches, resources make people do some strange things. Then thou shalt make thy way prosperous, and then thou shalt have good success. So when people ask me about success and prosperity, I like to point them to Joshua 1 and 8. Because this is an instruction that says if you want prosperity, keep, the law of the Lord in your mouth. Meditate on it day and night, that you can use that to clean your insides out. That you can then understand the type of decisions that you need to make in order to have prosperity, which would be considered good success. Psalms 94:1. O Lord God, to whom vengeance belongs. See, they don't think, vengeance is coming upon this wicked world. If you talk to them within the house of religion and Christianity today, no vengeance is coming. They say God is coming and Jesus is just going to love on, everybody. And, that's just the way the world is going to be. When I read this book, I don't see none of what they're talking about. And people get mad with me because I'm speaking based on what's written and explaining the lies that they tell. But because these institutions appear to be prosperous and they use their resources to promote their narrative, it's like the book says, beware, lest they spoil you with the philosophy and with the vain deceit. And they use those gifts, right, to control your heart. Looking at what we just talked about and what we just read within Joshua, what type of prosperity and or success are you attracted to? A number of people will do anything, just to live what they feel is a good life, only to find out they've destroyed their life. He says, O Lord God, to whom vengeance belongs. If you're like me, I pray for vengeance. I pray that the wicked be destroyed. I pray for their downfall. I pray that they receive what they have given. I pray for the vengeance of the Lord. I pray for righteous vengeance. I pray for the destruction of corruption. I pray for the downfall of this world, only for it to be lived in total righteousness. What's wrong with that? Y'all hate me for that? O Lord God, to whom vengeance belongs. O God, to whom vengeance belongs. Show thyself. I'm not the only one that prayed for vengeance. David himself was praying for vengeance. He said, show thyself. Lift up thyself, thou judge of the earth. Render a reward to the proud. That's what I'm talking about. The evil has to come down. Render the reward to the wicked. Number 3, he says, Lord, how long shall the wicked? How long shall the wicked triumph? I don't know about you, but these are real questions that reside in my thought. How long is this bullshit going to go on? How long will the wicked triumph? How long shall they utter and speak hard things? How long will the wicked just get to stand up there and talk crap? Tell lies? How long will they speak hard things? And all the workers of iniquity boast themselves. All these evil people, they get to stand up there and act like they're doing so good and boast about what they got and how they got it. And it was all in deceit, tricking those that are unaware, tricking them mentally to want to be like them in corruption. How long? He says, they break in pieces thy people. Right? This is the observation. These people that are living in corruption, when it comes to the righteous and or the innocent, all they know how to do is harm, destroy. They break in pieces thy people, O Lord, and afflict thine heritage. Like when it comes to the true heritage of the Creator, no, they tear that down. They'll give you $5 Indians, and, they'll give you, curly locks and black caps, and, they'll integrate with someone's heritage and take it over real quick, just to have the prestige. They're liars. They're deceivers. They are imposters on a world stage. But it's for a purpose, that the vengeance of the Lord shall be revealed, and we shall watch them fall to their hell. Meaning captivity, y'all, not fire. Watch them be treated as they've treated. Oh, they don't want to talk about that in your church, because they want you to think white Jesus is just going to come and love on everybody, and it's not true. The vengeance of the Lord is coming, and the wicked of the world is going to be made an example of, and it's not a devil in a red suit. It's a people. Isaiah 47:10. For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness. Thou hast said, none see me. This is the arrogance of these people. They're trusting in their wickedness. And they say, can't nobody touch us. God is with us. God don't see what we're doing as evil. He says, thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it have perverted thee. Y'all pay attention to what God is saying. Look at the genius in the prophet Isaiah, explaining to us in this day and time for what we're looking at when a man stands before the world in the seat of power, ruling the globe, and says, we're going to create a board of peace. And bringing these nations together, and they only come together because they want to see what else can they benefit. What else can they get? He says, thou hast trusted in thy wickedness. He says, thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it have perverted thee. And thou hast said in thy heart, I am, and none else beside me. See, that's the POTUS, the one that sits in the seat, of government, the superpower. He said, I am, and none else beside me. That was the thing he said the other day in the media outlet when they asked him if he thought there was anything that could stop him, and he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, yeah, there is one thing that can stop me, my mentality, my morals. God says, thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it have perverted thee. Micah 2:6. He says, prophesy ye not. And he says, say to them that prophesy, they shall not prophesy. He says to them, they shall not prophesy to them, that they shall not take shame. Let me explain that riddle, to you right there. See, when they come together and they say, we're going to create this board, of world peace, and they start talking about all these things, that they're going to do. All this is saying is for, these weak prophecies that they're proclaiming, that something that's supposed to happen, in the future. He's saying none of what they're saying is true. And if you believe it and if you go along with it, you're going to be seen as a liar just like them. And if you understand what it means to be a liar, then you will be put to shame. And if you don't want to be put to shame, don't associate with their prophecy and their lies. Isaiah 47:11. He says, therefore shall evil come upon thee. Ooh, pay attention. Because they don't talk about this in the black church. They don't talk about this in the church at all, in the seminary schools, and none of the religious institutions. Therefore shall evil come upon thee. Thou shalt not know from whence it rise. As I'm telling you, the impact of the collapse for the superpower and the world leaders, he's expressing it's going to come upon them so swift. And for those of us that are praying for the vengeance, this is when we celebrate. He says, thou shalt not know from whence it rise, and mischief shall fall upon thee. Thou shalt not be able to put it off. Like what's happening and how the collapse of this empire is taking place, they will not be able to stop it. And for all of those in them countries and these noblemen and people that have sided with them, you're going to receive the same benefit. All the prophets from before have prophesied against the kings and the nobles and the nations and their corruption. And that's why they were hated. That's why they were taken to their demise, because they were not cheering for the nonsense. Neither am I cheering for the nonsense. And since you have a platform and a social media and a way to speak, then I shall speak the oracles of God. I shall speak the prophecies of the prophets. I shall remind the people for that which is to come. For those that have an ear to hear and an eye to see, that they can understand how to adjust their mentality and align themselves with righteousness, sidestepping the wicked in all of its ways. He says, and mischief shall fall upon thee, and thou shalt not be able to put it off. And desolation shall come upon thee suddenly, which thou shalt not know. Welcome to America. Suddenly, and thou shalt not know. The impact of a collapse. Make America great again? There's no prophecy in that. It's not going to happen. Lies and deceit. Micah 2:13. The breaker is come before them. They have broken up and have passed through the gate. But when it says the breaker have come before them, this is looking at when the collapse, of their empires and their rule has come to an end. Because I'm telling you, the world is not going nowhere, you all. Don't worry about that. But what is going somewhere are all these evil people. That's a promise. That's a prophecy. That's one worth looking forward to. The breaker is come up before them. They have broken up and have passed through the gate and are gone out by it. And their king shall pass before them, and the Lord on the head of them. I want y'all to understand what was just said in Micaiah. And I know it's kind of difficult because of the way the language is written, right? And the time upon which how they were speaking this. And we've kind of gone through, some transitions, based on our understanding. But this is why, it's so important that the Spirit of the Lord be upon different individuals, that these things can be explained. As he said, if he doesn't reveal it to you, then you're not going to be able to articulate it. And that's why Sunday school is so bad. And all they're able to do is talk one or two verses, and then they go into an hour to a half hour long motivational speech. God is not with them. He didn't send them to preach or to teach. But they're doing it because, right, the devil has transformed himself into an angel of light, and so are his ministers transformed to resemble those things that he does. Isaiah 60:11. Therefore thy gates shall be open continually. Because we just saw where it said the Lord was going to be upon their head. Their kings, are going to fall. That was Micaiah talking. Now we're looking at Isaiah. The point, of this, because some folks will say, man, you're just bouncing around scripture, from one verse to the next. No, what I'm doing is based on how in the book we're given an instruction as to how we should go about reading it to then explain it, to convey a message. The precept upon precept, the line upon line, here a little and there a little, is to show the consistency within certain things that are being said across timelines, so that you can see it was spoken in this generation, in this age, and here we are now today, still able to draw the line to show the consistency that it's not stagnant. These things are actually happening. And what next can we look and or expect to take place? Therefore, thy gates shall be open continually. Isaiah 60:11. They should not be shut. They should not be shut day or night. See, when the flip come and their kings fall, everything they stole, they're going to have to give it back. So the gates are going to be open day or night, and they're going to be working their ass off, bringing it back. That men might bring unto thee the forces of the Gentiles. These heathen, these Gentiles, the way they're robbing the earth and the people of the world, they're going to have to bring it all back. I can't make them do it. No other man is going to be able to make them do it. And when I say man, I mean looking at how we stand in this mortal and or terrestrial flesh. But no different than, God through Moses, right, used the power against Moses to make him surrender. We're going to witness that again in our day and time against the rulers of the world. Y'all don't like it, like when you really point out who it is, and when you say what it is, y'all get offended, and you feel like, oh, that's racism and you're making it about race. But let's just deal with the truth and understanding who is responsible for the corruption in the world. Who has robbed the world, pillaged the world? Who has stole all the resources and lied and, have taken the lives and, have hidden their iniquity? And who have done these things to rise to the seat of power that they're in right now? The forces of the Gentile are going to be brought through the gates, which will not be shut day or night. They will be brought down from their heaven into their hell, meaning the things that they did holding people captive, they will then be taken captive. And for them, that's hell. He says that men might bring unto thee the forces of the Gentiles, and that their kings may be brought. This is what we're talking about. They're falling down. And although it looks good for them, their fall is written, and we're witnessing it in real time. Number 12 says, for the nation and kingdom that will not serve thee shall perish. Again, talking about that vengeance. When we switch the rulership in the world and it returns to the men of righteousness that God have chosen to rule according to the law, for those that buck up against, because you know they're going to buck. You know they're not just going to lay down. And this is when the no weapon formed against thee shall prosper. Why? Let me tell you why. See, in this flesh right here, the terrestrial flesh, we're weak. We don't have any strength. We can't, go up against them in this manner and or nature. I mean, yeah, we know that we're like physically stronger or whatever, but the capability that they have, with being able to drop fire from the sky and, how they have, long range weaponry and the things that they have, we can't compete with them, on that level in that manner. But when it says no weapon formed against thee shall prosper, it's because a transformation is going to happen. And that transformation must take place in order to deal with this type of wickedness. We can see ourselves moving from the terrestrial flesh to the celestial flesh. And I'm getting to that part because it's written that these things are going to take place, but not everybody is going to have that benefit because everybody don't want to change. But he says, the nation and kingdom that will not serve thee. And when the thee look like me, they say, kill me. They say, take me now. Just get it over with. I will never serve the likes of you. Okay. He says, the nation and kingdom that will not serve thee shall perish. People with the likes of me shall be in rule of the world in righteousness, you all, and don't act like it wasn't like that before. How the world was ruled in a time they call medieval, the dark ages. Y'all don't know that's code words and terminology saying that was when dark people, melanated people ruled the world. That was, medieval times, the dark ages. And then they came into power. See, the problem with the medieval and, the dark ages, we were corrupt too. Wicked men. Then God said, I'm going to show you the worst of the heathen. You think you corrupt? No, I'm going to show you what corruption look like. And they used that people. He used that people to show us the personification of evil and its greatness. And we now realize we don't want no more of that. It's like, oh, Lord, please let us get the righteousness, on, because this, now I understand what you're talking about and how you mean it. And I can see myself, how you can have been a certain way. And as you're changing your way, a person will come into your life exhibiting a behavior that you are coming out of. And you can see it through that person and you say, that's what I look like. That's what I sound like. Well, that's the point of these people today in rulership, is for us to look and understand, is that how we acted? Then we will no more see ourselves acting in that measure. The kingdom that will not serve thee shall perish, and the nation and those nations shall be utterly wasted. Isaiah 47:12, he says, stand now with thine enchantments. See, this is these people, and you know they work in witchcraft, but we ain't gonna act like the Creator don't already know. Because based on prophecy, he's telling us what they're going to do. See, right now, even as, this world is collapsing before our eyes, they are working their witchcraft. They're doing the things that they do, trying to maintain the power in the manner and or ways that they've done it, over the years, the ages and the generations, because this is how they believe, that they've come to the position and or power to be. So when it comes to the point of them falling as a nation and the, turn of the tide or the power is shifting and the new rulership is coming in righteousness, Isaiah 47:12, he says, stand now with thine enchantments and with the multitude of thy sorceries. Like God already know what type of wickedness these people are and what type of magic, they're into, and how many people have subjected themselves to this debauchery, thinking they can get ahead doing the evil work that these people do because that looks like success to some people. That looks like prosperity to some people, not understanding the differences within success, prosperity. There's the knowledge of wickedness and the knowledge of righteousness. So it is with prosperity for the wicked and for the righteous. Stand now with thine enchantments and with the multitude of thy sorceries, wherein thou hast labored from thy youth, meaning from one generation to the next. We can go back hundreds of years and come to understand the magic they practice, the signs and the symbols that they create, right? To enchant and or to create these incantations. They're very good at it. He says, if so be thou, shall thou be able to profit. Looking at if the Creator allows them to continue to prosper in this way, that's how they're going to go about it. There is no God to them. They are, the gods. They are, the ones that are in control of everything because they believe their sorceries and they believe the enchantment. So he says, if so be thou shall be able to profit, meaning I'm getting ready to cut you off at the knees. You won't even be able to stand. He says, if so be thou mayest prevail. The prophecy doesn't speak about them prevailing. But in their mind, they're convinced that if they keep up these enchantments and these sorceries, that they're going to continue to prosper and profit. They're going to prevail. God said no. Proverb 3:31. He says, envy thou not the oppressor. For a number of us that look out and see what appears to be prosperity and wealth, he said, don't envy that oppressor. Looking at the fact that they appear to be in power and you want to associate yourself with them, that you would even portray an evil upon your own people to receive some money or an advantage of some kind. You want the picture, you want the paper with the pictures of the slave masters on it. Envy thou not the oppressor, and choose none of his ways. That's hard for a lot of people because all we know or have been taught are the ways of the oppressor. But we're being told, warned, to not envy the oppressor. And to also not choose any of his ways. That goes down to the customs, the traditions, their lifestyles. Choose none of their ways. But this is a process, though, you all, because this is the life we know. This is all we have. But that's the point of grace, and grace being sufficient. Once we become aware of it, then we take that every day and we start changing. We start using, these things that we're learning to change our aptitude, to change our mind, to change our life, to change our life, to look at the things that we need to position, like removing one thing and applying another thing. But from the standard of prosperity and good success, upon righteousness, knowing how to build that house that we can move into it, we can transition into it from that place, understanding we're leaving the old place. We're packing up. We're moving. When you move, it don't happen all at once. You're packing this box and getting the glasses and, putting these things and taping, and finally you get everything set up, and then you get your truck, you get your movers and you load your truck and you're gone. And that's how we have to look at this transition that we make, as he says, choose none of their ways. Pack up, get out. First Maccabees 8:4, he says, and by their policies and patience, they had conquered all the places. Now we're talking, still looking at, as I told you before, we're going to get a description for who this wicked is, who's ruling the world in corruption, because we act like we don't know, who the man of sin is, who this corruption is rooted in. Here it is. Look, we get into the meat of it. And that by their policies and patience, they had conquered all the place. Though it were very far from them, they've conquered the world. They're the superpower. And the kings also that came against them from the uttermost part of the earth, until they discomforted them, meaning they overcame these nations and these people, and given them a great overthrow. He says, so that the rest did give them tribute every year. No different than what we're witnessing, talking about the tariffs and, the petrodollars. And right now it's about who's going to pay tribute to the superpower. Now let's come to understand who this evil is. Let's go back to Genesis 27:39, because we had talked about Esau, Jacob, Amalek, Ammon. These names, we were expressing, we don't use these names, anymore. But these people still exist. And through the prophecy, through the words, we get a description to identify who is who. Because right now they changed their name and they think they're well disguised and they're well hidden. And they've hijacked so many different people's heritage, and they're going by different names. You don't know what you're looking at. But here, look at this description and tell me if you can identify who this is. Genesis 27:39. And Isaac his father answered and said unto him, talking about Esau, behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth. Right now, whose dwelling is the fatness of the earth? And the dew of heaven from above. He says, and by the sword shall thou live. Who has lived by the sword to become in the position of power that they are right now, this day, this time? He says, thou shalt serve thy brother. At one time in history, Esau served his brother Jacob. They were confined in Mount Seir. But history tells us when Jacob fell, they were overthrown by the Assyrians and the Babylonians. That's when Esau got out. He says, and thou shalt serve thy brother. And it shall come to pass when thou shalt have dominion. So at one point, they were going to serve their brothers. They were, contained. But they broke the yoke. They got out. Now, through the sword, living in the fatness or upon the fatness of the earth, they have dominion, as it was expressed. Thou shalt have dominion. Thou shalt break the yoke from off thy neck. Again, at one point in time in history, they were contained in Mount Seir. Now they have dominion. Now look at the blessing. They're going to live in the best places in the world. They're going to get it, through violence, through the sword. They would be in the position and or place that they were under the control of their brother, but they would break that yoke and then they would go out and have dominion. Now they have dominion. Prophecy fulfilled. 2nd Ezra 14:13. 2nd Ezra 14:13, it says, now therefore set thine house in order and reprove thy people. Comfort such of them as be in trouble, and now renounce corruption. That's an instruction for those of us that truly want to move out of chaos. The responsibility placed on us is to set our house in order. And the first house you have to set in order is yourself through your thought process. He says, and reprove thy people. Once you set yourself in order, then you can go about helping to reprove and or correct others. Comfort such as them that be in trouble. And now renounce corruption. Don't be like them. Excuse me. 14 say, let go from thee mortal thoughts. Can you comprehend what it means to not deal with the mortal thoughts? These are the thoughts that keep you in transgression or in corruption or in deceit. He says, cast away the burdens of man. Put off the weak nature. To change your mindset. Right now, in living in the corruption, it's saying we have a weak mindset. We have to cast off that burden. Those are mortal thoughts. The mortal thoughts bring about the chaos, the dishonesty. But you're talking about raising your energy level and being on this spiritual plane, then it's not a game. Put off the weak nature, meaning don't keep giving in to your flaws. Identify it and overcome it. Put off the weak nature. Identify it and overcome it, being strong. Revelation 2:26. He says, and he that overcome and keep my works until the end. This is what we're talking about. Put off the weak nature. Overcome it. He said, he that overcome it and keep my works until the end, to him will I give power over the nations. You want to rule the world in righteousness? You want everything back that was taken from you? He says, overcome, keep the works until the end, and you'll have power over the nations. I know that's hard for a lot of people to understand and really take hold of. But this is the transition that's taking place. And if you're not willing to put off the weak nature, you're not going to be given the benefit to rule in righteousness. The way of the Creator does not work like the way of men. You have to prove yourself while you have time. That's what makes grace sufficient. Number 27, it says, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron. We've seen that before, where it talks about those that rebel against the rule of righteousness. They're going to be broken. He shall rule them with a rod of iron. As vessels of the potter, they shall be broken to shivers. Even as I have received of my Father, meaning this was explained and told that these things were going to happen. He says, and I will give him the morning star. Let me tell you about that morning star, because I don't know what some people have told and or, it has been said to you, but this, he says, and I will give him the morning star. This is the rising of light. And we have to understand light comes in different variations. Because Lucifer, also being the morning star, is a variation of light as well. As I told you about the knowledge of wickedness and the knowledge of righteousness. But in this one, I will give him the morning star. This is speaking of that light in righteousness that is going to remove all of the corruption from out of the world forever. No more will we have to deal with that type of corruption. Then he says in 29, he that have an ear, let him hear what the Spirit say unto the churches. Once again, we've come to vernacular, the churches. This is not talking about a physical building. And as I said, these words, are spoken with allegory, hidden meaning. What the Spirit say unto the men, people. Ecclesiasticus 4:7. He says, get thyself the love of the congregation, and bow thy head to a great man. I pulled that to help you understand what I just read based on, if you have an ear, let him hear what the Spirit say unto the churches. And I'm telling you, the churches, that's not a building, that's pertaining to men. So I pulled Ecclesiasticus 4:7, where it's telling you we're dealing with great men. And then it talks about bow thy head, right? Like we have an issue when it comes to serving one another in greatness. But if I'm before a man of dignity and greatness, I have no problem serving that man, assisting that individual. He says, get thyself the love of the congregation. We don't understand what love is. Love of the congregation is the standard for which the congregation is being upheld. And the only way that can be done is through the greatness of the man, not being wicked. Oh, we haven't seen that in our life. We don't even know what that looked like, because anytime we see one another, all we see is dishonesty, corruption, lies, thievery. Can't trust him. Numbers 27:16, he says, let the Lord, the God of the spirit of all flesh, set a man over the congregation. Now, I understand we're in this struggle now of reclaiming our families and dealing with the position of our women, dealing with the position, of our men. And we must understand the power of our women and the place of our women, and how if our women are down, our nation is down. Our women are responsible for raising our children. The great man that was spoken of in Ecclesiasticus 4:7, that the love of the congregation is toward, and we should bow our head to him. If it were not for our mothers being the head over our children, that great man would not be able to come into the position and the place, because she has to train him. She has to raise him up to be that great individual. Let the Lord, the God of spirits of all flesh, set a man over the congregation. So know that the man could not be great and sit over the congregation if it were not for the rearing of the mother. Without her, the nation will not stand. And I know for our mothers, our women, our sisters, the relationship has been damaged because of the abuse of men over the years. And this is what we're coming out of and being made to, understand what it means to trust each other in love, not perverted love on how you make me feel, but in love, understanding the way we're supposed to interact with one another in the name of God. And I use that term loosely, but it's a term that we use now today to identify higher power. 1 Peter 4:12. Beloved, think not it strange concerning the fiery trial, which is to try you. Like, y'all know this is weird, right? Y'all know, like, everything we're going through is like, this is strange. It's not supposed to be. We know we're great people. We know something is wrong. The fiery trial, which is to try you. He says, as though some strange thing happened unto you. He says, but rejoice. Looking at everything that's going on, and we come to understand, this is just temporary, and as we identify with the signs of the prophet, that we see the collapse of the wicked, we can rejoice, knowing as he's coming to an end, we're being uplifted. But will we be ready to rise to the occasion? Meaning we have taken advantage of grace, understanding how sufficient it is, and we have used the time to correct ourselves, understanding by what measure are we to live according to. He says, but rejoice insomuch as ye are partakers of Christ's suffering. Again, Christ's suffering, we're looking at the standard within life, looking at an individual being anointed or chosen that was the example. He left an example that we should live by, that we sin no more. And for him to get to that point of leaving the example, he suffered. No different than in this world today, as you would strive to live in righteousness, they will punish you and you will watch them reward evil. He says, rejoice in that. because you're not taking the easy way out. He says, but rejoice insomuch as ye are partakers of Christ's suffering. You're partakers of the righteous suffering. When his glory shall be revealed, ye may be glad also with exceeding joy. Now, this is what we're talking about. When his glory shall be revealed, it says, you'll be glad with exceeding joy. When it's revealed, this is that thing that happens where you heard me last week. I said, you don't have to, be concerned with somebody saying, Christ is over here, Christ is over there, or it tells you don't pay people any attention when they try to tell you about the coming of Christ. Because if you understand this prophecy, nobody's going to have time to say it because it's going to happen so fast. They won't be able to point it out. But here, 1 Corinthians 15 and 51, he says, behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall be changed. This is what I'm saying. When it's revealed, we're going to be changed, meaning we're going to transition from the terrestrial flesh to the celestial flesh. He says, I'm going to show you a mystery. In a moment, in a twinkling of an eye, at the last trump, the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible. Meaning this flesh, this is what's considered, the dead, shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. What are we going to be changed into? The celestial flesh. And this is why you don't have to worry about nobody trying to tell you Christ over here, Christ over there, and this and that, because it's going to happen in the twinkling of an eye. When it's revealed, for those of you that have positioned yourself to receive the reward of the righteous, it's going to happen. 1 Peter 4:7. I hope y'all understand what is being expressed as far as knowing of the Christ consciousness, the Christ energy, the transition to immortality, to where no weapon formed against us shall prosper, where we're not in fear, where then we have the power to deal with these corrupt individuals. Because right now, in this flesh right here, they have, too much technology that they can use against us. But during the transformation, none of it will work, for them. 1 Peter 4:17, he says, for the time is come that judgment must begin at the house of God. It starts with those that are righteous. The house of God, meaning judgment, meaning we have to look at the corruption in our own lives. We have to get that out of our lives, out of our mind, out of our heart, and prepare ourselves to make this transition. So that judgment starts with those that are being, prepared to live that righteous life, to uphold the world in righteousness. Judgment must begin at the house of God. And if it first begin at us, what shall the end be of them that obey not the gospel of God? What will it be for them that continue to live their life in righteousness? Continue to live their life in unrighteousness. See, the judgment is coming upon those that are of the house of God, so that we can transition to manage righteousness. But for those that are living in corruption, what is their end going to be? He says, and if the righteous scarcely be saved, scarcely, where shall the ungodly and the sinner appear? What's going to happen, to all of these that glorify, in their corruption, that masquerade, around in all of the evil that they can find? Where will they appear? 19 says, wherefore let them suffer according to the will of God. Commit the keeping of their souls to him in well-doing and unto a faithful creator. Keeping the souls to him in well-doing. Saying, if you're going to change your mind to live in accordance to an upright standing, scarcely are certain individuals going to be saved, but a vast majority are not going to make it. As the book of Jeremiah tells us, the bodies are going to be from one end of the earth to the other. It's unfathomable what's getting ready to transpire. Sounds like a fable, a folktale, like, people are very comfortable, in their position, not knowing, what's quickly coming upon them like a tsunami. Second Ezra 14 and 16. For yet greater evils than those which thou have seen happen shall be done hereafter. He says, look, how much the world shall be weaker through age. And this is what we're witnessing while they're trying to say it's getting better. And they're promising peace. This world is getting more corrupt, more wicked. And the prophecy is telling us, beyond what they're positioning and or showing through, all of their venues of media, the world is getting weaker. I don't know if you can recognize it, or not. He says, so much more shall evils increase upon them that dwell therein. That's why the world has to go through an overhaul. The evil is increasing from age and generation. And again, I see it. Do you see it? Do you realize something is wrong, but you're like really trying to figure out what to do about it? Micaiah 2 and 10, it says, arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest. If you realize something is wrong, for real, like you really understand something is wrong, he's saying, this is not your rest. It's for us to understand this world of corruption and wickedness. This is not our place. But he says, arise. And what that means is start fixing yourself. Start preparing yourself for the transition. If you don't prepare yourself, I promise you, you're going to receive the reward of the wicked. There's work that you have to do in preparing yourself. He says, this is not your rest, because it is polluted. This world is polluted. It shall destroy you, even with a sore destruction. You can't trust it. They're not going to bring about peace. Coming down to the last few verses, you all. They cannot bring the world into peace. Second Ezra 4 and 30, because most have not understood even with Adam is where it started. The grain of evil seed in his heart. You all have heard me talk about it. I just decided to pull the verse to show you what it speaks of, and how for that is what we're now witnessing with all, of the chaos we see in the world today. Let's look at it. For the grain of evil seed have been sown in the heart of Adam. Just a grain, you all. I don't know how much planting you all have done, and how you can put one seed in the ground and you can just watch it, But it says, for the grain of evil seed have been sown in the heart of Adam. From the beginning, you all, and how much more ungodliness. This is what we're witnessing in the world right now. How much more ungodliness have it brought up unto this time? That one grain of evil seed is the cause of all this corruption in the world. And how much more shall it yet bring forth until the time of the thrashing come? So this is for us to understand. These people aren't going to provide no peace, no righteousness, no understanding, no prosperity of any kind for anybody other than themselves until the time of the thrashing comes. I pray for vengeance. You all heard me earlier. I pray for their end. And you should too, because then righteousness shall abound. What's wrong with that? He said, until the time of the evil is going to be in position until the time of the thrashing, meaning God is going to destroy all the corruption. Matthew 16:24. Then said Jesus unto his disciples, if any man shall come after me, y'all pay attention, because they don't tell this right in the church, in the seminary schools, in the cathedrals. They don't tell this right. Then Jesus said unto his disciples, if any man shall come after me, let him deny himself. This is what you've heard me talk about for the past 2 hours. What it means to deny yourself, to change your way, to look at cleaning the inside of yourself, and what you use to get that done, being the law of the Lord is perfect to convert the soul. That's what you have to use to clean your inside, to change your mind. It's the washing of the water with the word. He says, deny himself. Then he says, and take up his cross. And I've explained to you all before what that cross is, because in your mind, it's just an image of a piece of wood. But you have to go to the symbol of the Tav, T-A-V, and see that that is the symbol of what we call a cross. To know the hidden meaning of what he's saying, you have to pick up what you're going to use to deny yourself. The cross is the covenant. He says, pick up the covenant and follow me. The church don't tell the truth within the hidden meaning, the allegory. These parables, they don't know them, and Christ said it wasn't meant for them to know. But when you take up your cross and follow him, when you deny yourself, you pick up the covenant. You use that to govern your life. And in doing that, you'll find how much you're denying yourself of evil, your lust. You're correcting yourself. You're allowing yourself to live in the love of God based on keeping his commandments. Job 36:13. He says, but the hypocrites in heart heap up wrath. If you don't deny yourself, you're that hypocrite, and in your heart, you're just going to keep heaping up wrath, right? He says, they cry not when he bind them. Like they have no issue with the corruption and evil that they do. They're not sorry. They're not pitiful about what they do when they do their evil. Luke 4:6, he says, and the devil said unto him, all this power will I give thee. And I pulled this because people don't think the devil have power. But I want to show you where it's written that he does, and he was given the power for a specific purpose. Because these are the hypocrites that are heaping up wrath. And they're moving as if they're doing some good, in the world. But I want to show you who their God is. And the devil said unto him, all this power will I give thee. What is all this power? What you think he's talking about? All this power will I give thee. And all the glory of them, he says, and all the glory of them, for that is delivered unto me. So he's saying, I've been given a degree of power, and I can give it to whomever I want. So when you look at all the power that is given, you got to think about the people that are in control of the world today and how they are ruling it in corruption, who they serve. He said, that is delivered unto me, and to whomever I will give it. He says, if thou therefore will worship me, all shall be thine. So when we talk about America, the seat of government, the superpower, the world leaders, the UN, these people have received their power from the devil. That's who they worship. I know it's hard to perceive, it's hard to understand, it's hard to believe, but these are the ones that deal with their enchantments and their sorceries. And he said they've done it from their youth. If you got eyes to see, if you got ears to hear, you can understand. And these are the things we're being asked to identify with as we talk about prophecy right here in 2026. Realizing when it comes to world peace, these people can't offer no peace to nobody. Job 36:14, he says, they dying in youth, and their life is among the unclean. They're not going to prosper. They are being eliminated even in their youth, and their life is among the unclean. And anyone that associates with their way of living and you're stuck on communicating and doing things in that manner, then you're among the unclean. This is why he says, come out of her, my people, and receive none of her plagues. The question is, are you his people? Hosea 5:15, we're coming to the end. He says, I will go and return to my place till they acknowledge their offense. And this is what we're looking like. Where is God? What is going on? He's saying he's going to be in his place until we acknowledge the offense. Have you acknowledged the offense? Have you actually turned yourself around to commit yourself to changing yourself? Have you been truthful with yourself to acknowledge the offense? Have you looked at your life in corruption to say, I have to turn around? I did turn around, and encourage yourself to continue moving towards the correction in your life, to acknowledge the offense. He says, and seek my face in their affliction, they will seek me early, meaning if it were not for these hard times, if we were not feeling the things that we were feeling, a number of us knowing that it should be better, we'd forget about God. But through this affliction, he says, we'll look for him. Job 35:15, he delivered the poor in his affliction and opened their ears in oppression. This is where we are right now. I know I hear real good through all of this oppression and through the affliction. Ecclesiastes 7:7, he says, surely oppression make a wise man mad, and a gift destroy the heart. All the oppression that we're witnessing, that is supposed to make you angry. But for some people, the gift, right? The leverage or the money or certain things that they give, that destroys your heart. And some people say there is no oppression. Ain't nothing happening. It's all good. Look at me. Look at what I'm doing. Look at what I have. Look at how I live. They say, ain't nothing wrong with the world. Isaiah 11:1. And I'm trying to move fast as I'm coming, down to these last few verses. Isaiah 11:1, we're going to read 1-6. This is good. This is good. And there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse. This is prophecy, you all. And a branch shall grow out of his roots. This is prophecy. This is what's about to happen, all within the transition. And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him. The Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge, and the Spirit of the fear of the Lord. This is the understanding upon which the world shall be guided in righteousness. And he shall make him quick of understanding in the fear of the Lord. Now, quick of understanding in the fear of the Lord is not talking about his knees knocking. Quick of understanding in the fear of the Lord means this individual understands how the law works. He respects it above all things else. He respects this understanding, this word of God. He says, and shall not judge after the sight of his eyes. Because you know how some of us do. We'll see someone or something and we've already drawn to a conclusion. Neither reprove after the hearing of his ears. You know how that go. Somebody can come tell you something about somebody else and you've already, made your conclusion. But this wise leader will not have any of those traits because he'll understand based on his senses how to exercise his senses, including understanding and speech. He says, but with righteousness shall he judge the poor and reprove with equity for the meek of the earth. This is where we want to be. He says, and he shall smite the earth. Okay. When it says, and he shall smite the earth, it means with this righteous understanding. Smite the earth, no more wickedness, no more corruption. Root it out. He says, and he shall smite the earth with the rod of his mouth. It says, and his breath, right? And with his breath, and with the breath of his lips shall he slay the wicked. This is just that allegory, that imagery. Just saying this standard law or way of life is what's going to rule the world and the wicked will not stand, a chance. All right. 2 more verses, I'm done. Well, 3 more, Jeremiah, Micaiah, and Proverbs, and we'll be done for today. He says, Jeremiah 23:5. He says, behold, the day comes, saith the Lord, that I will raise unto David a righteous branch, and a king shall reign and prosper. and shall execute judgment and justice in the earth. Y'all, this is what we're looking for as it pertains to righteous rule. And prophecy says that this rule is going to come through a particular line of people. But the world today don't want to talk about that because they want you to think the people that are in position in place, that's how the world is going to be ruled forever. But in their chaos and in their corruption, we all can see how it's abruptly coming to its end. Number 6 says, in his days, Judah shall be saved and Israel shall dwell safely. You all, this Israel is not talking about them people over in the Middle East playing the state of Israel. And that's just being frank. We've already talked about how they've hijacked different heritages and $5 Indians, and, they do whatever they need to do in order to make it look like, they are the prestige, of the world and God, and it's all lies. And Israel shall dwell safely. And this is his name whereby he shall be called, the Lord our righteous. And what we're saying right here is not about one individual. This is about the way of life in the world, the standard upon which people will be governed. It will be called the Lord our righteous. I don't know if you understand to the depth or degree, like how important this really is. The Lord our righteous. I know we don't know what that looked like, but understanding the type of corruption and dishonesty and, the wickedness and unrighteousness we deal with right now, I'm ready for the Lord our righteous. As a standard and or a way of living, okay, teach me that. I've been taught the ways of corruption and how to destroy and live within self-destruction. Micaiah 5:4, he says, and he shall stand and feed in the strength of the Lord, meaning we're going to live according to the customs and the traditions and the right manners in which the world can thrive. No more living in the spirit of just trying to survive, just trying to make it, man. It's just kind of rough. I'm on the grind. We grind so much. What's left? And he shall stand and feed in the strength of the Lord, in the majesty of his name. Now, in the majesty of his name, I keep telling you, the name is not saying Jesus. The name is not saying Yahweh El Shaddai. In the majesty of his name, he said, he put his word above all the name. His name is the word of God. The majesty of his name is the standard upon which we live. That's the thing that we get to show and or glorify within God, his example on earth. In the majesty of the name of the Lord, his God. And they shall abide. See, it's not talking about an individual's nomenclature. We don't abide to a nomenclature. We abide to different rules, different understandings, different ways of going about. He says, for now shall he be great unto the ends of the earth. And don't be confused because it says, and now he. Because the he that it's talking about is the way of life, the standard. That's going to be great until the end of the earth. That's how the earth is going to be salvaged and or saved. A shift in the mindset. I know you all, it's written in allegory, like, and if the Lord does not point these things out to certain individuals, they don't know how to explain it to you. But this is talking about how we conduct ourselves. This book being read is more to be lived, to practice the principles within the book. Most folks just want to read it and say, I read it or I didn't understand it. You don't understand it because you ain't trying to do it. Proverbs 4:7. This is our last verse and we're done. Proverbs 4:7, he says, wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom. This is what we've been talking about the entire time, where you've seen, he, and you've seen, name, and that may confuse you, and you've seen, Jesus and Lord, and these things may confuse you. But in the end, it's about wisdom, the principal thing. Get wisdom, that you may understand how to conduct yourself, that you may understand how to treat another person in love. Not a love perverted to how they can make you feel, but a love understanding how you deal righteously with one another. Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding. And I want to thank you all for taking this time again on another Sabbath, Saturday morning, as we talked about world peace, as we look at, prophecy, 2026, right? See if I can put my image back up there. Give y'all the image. There it is. Right? Prophecy, 2026, world peace. I had that image up earlier, and old TikTok didn't like it. They sent me a warning, right? But I'm at the end, so I put it back up so y'all can see it, one more time. But with wisdom, get wisdom, and with that, get understanding. Because these are the things that we'll need to survive and enter into the world that's coming. Because under this leadership right here, based on the image that you see promising the world peace, you all, nothing good is going to come, from this. Definitely more destruction, definitely more loss of life, definitely more lies, more deceit. When it talked about that evil and how much more evil is going to come, this is the personification of evil. This is the man of sin. This is the revealing. This is that son of perdition. This is that people that the Bible talks about would live by the sword. The fatness of the earth would overtake a man, his house, even his heritage. That would convince themselves that they are and there is no God beside them. That would convince themselves that their mortality, not mortality, their mentality, their mind, their morals, that's the only thing that's going to keep the world afloat. Proverbs 4:7, wisdom is a principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding. And with that, I say shalom, you all. I want you to enjoy the rest of, the Sabbath, this Saturday, morning here.